Syphon Filter 2 released for the PlayStation 1 in March of 2000 here in the US. Developed by Eidetic Inc., known as Ben Studios, who would later go on to develop Days Gone, and published by 989 Studios, who brought you such classics as Jet Moto, Twisted Metal, and Warhawk, to name a few. 989 was a big name in the gaming industry back then. When you saw their logo after you popped in your game, you knew you were in for some quality gaming. But nowadays, they really only publish sports games for the Sony systems. If you couldn't tell by the name, Syphon Filter 2 is the direct sequel to the original Syphon Filter, also released on the PlayStation 1. Syphon Filter 2 cleans up the graphics a bit. Overall, the game looks much crisper and the environments are even more detailed than the first, which already had great looking areas to begin with. And the cutscenes thankfully look a lot less goofy than they did in the first game.
There he is! Archer, have you taken care of Logan?
Not yet. We're working on it. He's proving troublesome.
I want him finished, even if you have to blow up the whole state to do it.
Syphon Filter 2 has a good deal of missions, spanning across 2 discs and a total of 21 levels to go through. You find yourself in control of Gabe Logan, who after the events of the first game is now in opposition of the agency they once worked for, and is now being pursued by the US government. It gets worse. Gabe's partner Leanne is infected with the Syphon Filter virus throughout the game, so Gabe sets out to find the cure, all while being a target on everyone's radar. You also play as Leanne during a number of missions. She controls the exact same as Logan, as the virus hasn't completely taken over her body, but she's a ticking time bomb, which makes playing as her pretty stressful, and I liked it a lot. Kind of like how Batman is infected with the Joker's blood throughout the Arkham Knight game. Leanne might play exactly like Logan, but most of her missions are the stealth missions, which are a new addition to the series. Yep, you'll go from running around in third person, shooting everything in sight with Logan, to creeping along behind enemies, avoiding detection during Leanne's missions. At first, the missions are pretty annoying because you'll have no idea where the enemies are facing. There's no indication on the minimap, just a green dot showing the enemy walking, but not the direction they're facing. To be honest, I respect that though, because Metal Gear showed you where the enemies were facing, and after a while it became a Pac-Man game just using the minimap. But with Syphon Filter 2, you'll have to sharpen your skills and learn enemy patterns and where they spawn in order to complete stages. In stealth missions, you hide in doorways or behind boxes to avoid detection. You can't lean up against walls, but you could use the oldest trick in the book and tilt the camera around corners to see what lies ahead. If you shoot your firearm, you set off the alarms. Walk slowly up to enemies and zap them with the taser for best results. If enemies notice a body, they'll be alerted as well. Nice attention to detail there. You can't move bodies, so plan accordingly. The stealth mechanic was a welcome addition because the developer applied the same level of detail the series is known for into the new stealth gameplay mechanic. Oh, and Gabe has a few stealth sections as well, and vice versa, Leanne has a few pure action stages. Which brings me to my next point. It seems like the run and gun missions in this game don't have the same level of complexity that the first game had. It's a minor nitpick on my part, but the first game had me running around a lot more during levels, and I like that, completing different objectives spread out around the map. And it was easier to miss certain objects of interest if you weren't paying attention, causing you to have to circle back to previous areas more often. Syphon Filter 2 seems a lot more linear. The objectives are easy to find, and the map screen even tells you their precise locations. There isn't much circling back to previous areas either. Syphon Filter 2 keeps you on a forward path for the most part, finding the next press triangle at this switch or computer to advance the story moments. It may just be that I'm more efficient at playing the series, having just recently completed the first game, but let me know if you felt Syphon Filter 2 was a bit more easier than the first. You would probably compare the graphics in Syphon Filter 2 to the graphics in Metal Gear Solid on the PS1, given that they're both action stealth type games. I'd say Metal Gear wins out because of the top-down perspective that it uses, giving the game a much cleaner look, while Syphon Filter 2 has a true third-person view, having to render the game a lot differently. That being said, Syphon Filter 2 does an amazing job of displaying the game world in third person. The textures in the environments are improved over the first game, and some of the best textures you'll see on the PS1. Objects around the map are recognizable to their real-life counterparts. The notorious PS1 shaky look is kept to a minimum while running around. I couldn't help but feel that the developers had a good grasp of the PS1 at this point, and Syphon Filter 2 is running as efficiently as possible.
Gabe? Looks like this charge is part of a radio remote chain, and I think another one just got armed. See if you can find it, then call me.
I'm happy to report that most of the issues I had with the first game are gone here. The biggest problem I had with the first game was that most enemies wore flak jackets, causing me to have to stop, aim, and shoot for their heads every 5 seconds during later levels. The game sprinkles in a lot more non-flak jacket wearing enemies who are still challenging to defeat in later levels, keeping that run and gun gameplay going. You'll still have to look around corners for headshots here and there, but it never feels cheap or overdone. The challenge is still there with things like enemies hiding in places you would never expect to look, or enemies that pop into existence right behind you after a new event triggers. This was super frustrating and probably the main cause of my deaths in the game. But once you know where enemies spawn, it's not a big deal. Certain enemies can headshot you, resulting in instant death. You'll have to roll around to avoid this, but even at that, headshots are not completely avoidable. You get a basic selection of guns to choose from, ranging from pistols, shotguns, and fully automatic machine guns, as well as grenades. The first game had plenty of challenging boss battles. Boss battles in Syphon Filter 2 are almost non-existent, with about 2 to 3 boss battles which are not even challenging, as most bosses go down with a well-planned headshot. I mean, I guess that's more realistic, but still pretty boring. On top of that, most missions simply end after completing your objectives. So if boss battles were your thing, don't expect them here. The developers must have felt that the first game was too difficult, because Syphon Filter 2 just seems like an easier game overall. It doesn't make it a worse game, it's just easier. The sound design in Syphon Filter 2 is again one of the best you'll find on the PS1, and it helps enhance the experience by making the game feel like it should be an action movie, right along Mission Impossible or 007. A small detail that I love to see is when footstep sounds match the terrain you're on, and this game does that well. Exploring stages is accompanied by techno-style espionage background music, which matches the pace of the game perfectly during action sequences. During stealth missions, the game chooses a more subdued musical score which also fits well. Outdoor areas have a matching soundscape accompanied with them, like the sounds of a military base or sounds of a mountain pass. The ambient sounds get quiet when you pop indoors and loud again when you step back outside. A small detail, but I love to see it. Gunfire is perhaps the weakest aspect of this game's sound design. All the guns pretty much sound the same, loud and loud, except for the silencer guns obviously. Gunfights can get a bit grating on the ears after a while, with 7 different enemies shooting at you at the same time.
Snipers, now!
Damn it! Chance, move!
I honestly had more fun playing Syphon Filter 2 again recently than I did back when it came out. This game shoots above its weight class, and I love games that push the limits. The developer didn't let the limitations of the PlayStation 1 affect the attention to detail in this game, and that's something I feel developers today can learn from. It's no wonder that Syphon Filter 2 has sold over 1.32 million copies, and I've never met anyone that doesn't remember this game fondly. That'll do it for my review of Syphon Filter 2. Subscribe to support the channel. Thanks for watching. Let me know what you think of Syphon Filter 2 in the comments, and I'll see you on the next one.